Today's topic is the adjective phrase. Just like noun phrases, adjective phrases can be simple or complex. So simple adjective phrases contain one adjective only, and complex adjective phrases contain one adjective plus a pre or post modifier. So this also means that, similar to noun phrases, a general structure for adjective phrases may be set up like this. We can see we have the head position in the middle there, and then we have two optional positions, the pre-modifier and the post-modifier. Now, typical pre-modifiers in adjective phrases are adverbs. So they modify the adjective. So we have totally cool, where cool is the adjective and totally is the adverb. We can also have noun phrases actually pre-modifying adjectives. So in 7 years old, old is the adjective here, and 7 years is a noun phrase. Typical post-modifiers are preposition phrases, but also clauses. And we can have both finite clauses and non-finite clauses in the post-modifier position. So remember that finite clauses, they have a verb which is inflected for person, number, and tense, and they'll also have the subject. So taller than I am, we can see that am is finite and we have the subject I. But they can also be non-finite clauses, the post-modifiers. So here we'll have a verb which is not inflected for person, number, and tense. So for instance, in the infinitive, like in slow to react against the invading forces, or another non-finite form like the progressive or the ing form. We see that in busy working on their grammar assignments. So just like with noun phrases as well, adjective phrases may contain both post-modifiers and pre-modifiers at the same time. And we have an example here from a tune that may or may not be familiar to you. Too hot to handle, too cold to hold. Now, when it comes to the syntactic functions of the adjective phrase, that is the functions that the adjective phrase can fulfill in the sentence, there are basically two ways, namely the attributive use and the predicative use. So attributive use is when the adjective phrase is used as a modifier at a non-primary level, so typically inside a noun phrase. Predicative use is when the adjective phrase is used at the primary level, for instance as a subject complement or as an object complement. So here are some examples of the predicative use of adjective phrases. First, we have some subject complements. Now in Danish we also call the subject complement subjektsprædikat, and it's this word prædikat or predicative, all right, that might help you to remember here. So here we have some examples where we can see the adjective phrases are used as subject complements, so they modify the subject in a way. So in the final one that looks good, we can see it's in italics. That's the simple adjective phrase, and it modifies that in this case. It can also occur as object complement. So here the adjective phrase modifies the object of the sentence. So in the first one, she just called me silly. Silly there is the adjective phrase, and it modifies me, which is the object in the sentence. Now some adjectives and adjective phrases can only be used in this predicative manner. So many of the so-called A adjectives, like ajar and awake, also adjectives that contain post modifiers, and that's because they become very long in this way. Some health adjectives like ill or poorly, and also certain state of mind adjectives like glad and pleased. So for all of these we can only say that he is awake. We can't say the awake boy. We can say that he is insane. We can't, or insane in the brain, sorry, because we need the post modifier, right? We can't say the insane in the brain boy or man. We can say the boy is ill. We can't say the ill boy. And we can say the boy is pleased. But we can't really say the pleased boy. So attributive use then is when the adjective phrase is used as a modifier, so it's inside another phrase. So here we're moving beyond the primary level. And here are some examples. We can see we can have the adjective phrase as pre-modifier in a noun phrase, an ugly bastard, for instance. So here, bastard is the head of the noun phrase, N is the determiner, and ugly is the pre-modifier in the noun phrase. And so this pre-modifier is actually an adjective phrase on its own. We can also use them as post-modifiers in noun phrases as well. Now, there's an important distinction to be made between descriptive and classifying adjectives in this case. So descriptive adjectives express a feature or an attribute of the referent of the noun it modifies. And these are also gradable. Here we have some examples. A very happy man. So man is the noun that refers to something in the real world. All right, so the referent there. And we can see happy, then it describes a feature or an attribute of this man. Now, classifying adjectives, on the other hand, they create a special type of category, or they denote a kind of category. They denote a kind of relation with the noun that they modify. So this also means that they're non-gradable. So here we have some more examples. The royal family and Portuguese peasants. Now, the royal family is a kind of family. All right, and Portuguese peasants are a kind of peasants. So just the fact that they're Portuguese, it sets them apart from the Spanish peasants, for instance, but it doesn't really express a particular attribute of the peasants themselves. Now, you might want to consult your book in page 155 for some more information and also a list of typical classifying adjectives. Now, some adjectives may be both classifying and descriptive, actually. So here we can see a musical instrument. In this example, musical is classifying because it denotes a type of instrument. But we can also talk about a very musical voice, and in this case, musical is descriptive because it denotes an attribute or a feature of a voice in this case. So if we return to adjectives occurring as pre-modifiers in noun phrases, we see that they fall into typical categories, and I've listed them here. So we can talk about restrictive adjectives that restrict or narrow down the reference of the noun. We also have some adverb-related adjectives, and in this case, the adjective-noun combination seems to be derived from a verb-adverb clause structure in a way. So if I say my former friend, well, really this denotes a person who was formerly my friend. Sometimes we also find hyphenated adjectives like a 6-year-old boy, for instance. We also talk about directional and locative adjectives. So when we talk about the placement of things in relation to other things or other places, for instance, so left, right, inner, outer. And finally, some minor adjectives, adjectives referring to calendrical features like hourly or daily, and also major and minor. Now, here are some examples of the typical ways of using adjective phrases as post-modifiers. They sometimes occur as post-modifiers in certain titles or legal terms or fixed expressions, and often these are taken from French or Latin. Some adjective phrases also occur with infinitive clauses as post-modifiers. So, a man eager to please. So again, here we have a noun phrase, a man, which has a post modifier, eager to please. And this is a clause, because we can see we have the verb please in there, but it's an infinitive clause because the verb occurs in the infinitive. Now we can also consider these types of clauses as verbless clauses that are made from reduced relative clauses. So instead of saying a man eager to please, we could say a man who is eager to please, and that might be the underlying structure. We also find some adjective phrases with prepositional phrases as post modifiers. So the example is the person responsible for safety. So responsible is the adjective, for safety is a prepositional phrase used as a post modifier. And again, we can actually consider these verbless clauses made from reduced relative clauses. Finally, we also find adjective phrases in noun phrases with indefinite pronouns. We can say something blue, anyone present, anything warm, where it's the indefinite pronoun, something, anyone, and anything that are in the head position of the noun phrase. And we have the adjective phrases occurring as post modifiers. Now, in some cases, the meaning of the adjective actually differs depending on whether it's used as a pre-modifier or a post-modifier. So here we have a couple of examples, a concerned mother versus the mother's concerned. We can see in the first instance, it occurs here as a pre-modifier to mother, and it means bekymret. Where the mother's concerned, it means the pågældende mødre. And we have some more examples here, the opposite direction versus the house opposite, the proper questions versus the question proper. Now, in addition to such adjectives that seem to have built-in differences in meaning, there also seems to be a general functional difference between pre-modifying and post-modifying adjectives in terms of expression of temporal extent. Now, often if a adjective phrase occurs in the pre-modifier position, it indicates some sort of permanence, all right? So the visible stars, it means the stars that are visible to us, but at all times, basically. Whereas if the same adjective phrase occurs in the post-modifier position, so the stars visible tonight, it sort of indicates that perhaps there is a temporal aspect. So perhaps this is not something that is a permanent state, but something that might change tomorrow night, for instance. Now, likewise, there may also be differences in meaning in terms of the attributive and predictive uses of certain adjectives. So an able musician means he's dygtig. If you say he's able to play the guitar, it just means he's capable of doing it, right? I stand til. Politically alive students, it means that they're active and engaged. If you say it's alive, it just means it's alive, actually. Comparison is the last thing we need to talk about today, because it's possible to inflect descriptive adjectives. This is also called gradbøjning in Danish. So comparison is the inflection of a descriptive adjective in terms of its degree of X-ness. So X here is the attribute that the adjective in question denotes. So English and most other languages have 3 degrees of comparison, and it's similar for Danish. We have the positive, comparative, and superlative form. So første, anden, tredje grad, right? So we talk about the basic degree, a higher degree, and then finally the highest degree, that's the superlative. So here is a table that just indicates and shows the 2 different ways that we can form these different comparison forms. So we can either use inflections, so big, bigger, biggest. So this often occurs with shorter words with 1 or 2 syllables. And we can do it syntactically, where we use more and most. Some adjectives may actually take both types of comparison. And some adjectives are also irregular in terms of how they follow this paradigm. And you may, again, just want to read up on this in your book. Now, next week is our last session in the semester, and we'll move on to the adverb phrase.